Okay, this is the first of a couple of looking at the Move tool tutorials, and I know this is a basic tool that you've already used a little bit, but I bet I can show you a couple features you haven't seen before. So I have a file set up and it's got multiple layers. There's one object on each layer, and I've chosen to use different shapes for these objects. Once you have a file set up, then let's continue. So up here in our control options panel, there's a couple of things we can check out. First off, let's set this so that the auto select is turned on and the show transform controls for now is turned off. Auto select, when it's turned on, will let you go immediately to an object on its layer by just clicking on it. You don't have to command click, you can just click on it. And if you also check on the show transform controls, then it will have an automatic transform box around it when you click on it that you can easily change the size to. You don't have to hit enter to finalize it, or actually, yes, I'm sorry, you do. You have to hit enter, which will finalize it, and then it will reset that transform box and you can move on to another object. So I'm going to step back so that other one's set the way I want it. These two options, I usually work with them turned off because for me it is too easy to accidentally grab the wrong thing and either distort it or move it completely where I don't want it to be. So I'm going to turn those two things off on mine. To get to the layer that I want to get to, I just hold down Command and click, and that will do the same thing. And if I need to transform, I hit Command T to transform. I like using those commands better. It's a little bit less accident prone. So there's a few more things up here we want to take a look at. Right now, when I'm just on one layer, none of these arrange options are available. To make them available, you have to have more than one layer selected in your layer palette. To do that, hold down Command and click on a second layer. And if you click and drag out here in your canvas, you can see which ones you actually have picked. So if we pull these over, so we're looking more just at them, now we have some options that we can do. So we can align these two layers a couple of different ways. Let's click on the one that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over. Now looking at these symbols, it's pretty self-explanatory what they do. The one I'm looking at has two boxes, different shapes, and a line drawn down the center of them. And when I click on it, it will line them up so that they are perfectly centered one with another. If I choose either the one to the right or the left, it will line up the right edges or the left edges. Or I can even click on the line up top and bottom. Now I've made my layers a little bit transparent each, so when I do stuff like this, you can see where they overlap. But if I zoom in really close, you can see it is exactly lined up. Those pixels are perfectly aligned one with another. That's what this function does. So I'm going to grab my Move tool and hit Command 0 to zoom out to my full screen again. Something else we can do if we want to affect a whole bunch of objects at once is maybe line them up with the tops lining up all the way across my canvas. So if I select all of them, which I can do a couple of ways, I can grab all the layers either over here in my layers box, command clicking on them individually, or clicking on one and holding down shift to grab a whole bunch. We'll do that. So see there, they're all selected. Or I can hold down my command key, click and drag, and any layer that I drag over will be added to my layer selection. So I have all of these selected, all of my options up here are available. So first thing first, let's see which one we want to do. We want to maybe line up all of these objects by the top. So let's try this first one. There, they're all lined up by the top. We can also distribute them equally across distance from their centers, which is this one. So if I drew a line down the center of each one of these, in fact, I have my Snap to tool on, you'll notice once there it is, there's that center. When I do that, these lines are perfectly distanced apart. So even though these shapes might not look like they're perfectly distanced because they are different shapes and at different angles, they actually are. The centers of them are perfectly equidistant from one to another. Now if you followed along and pulled out guidelines, let's get rid of those right now. Go up to View and Clear Guides. There, they're gone. I've still got all my layers selected. Might as well click a few other things while we're at it. Let's look at the center horizontally. I know it's around here somewhere. There it is. It's the second one. So now not only are the centers lined up this way equally from each other, now they are centered this way. Okay, so that's using objects. What about text? I'm going to get rid of these. Grab my text tool and type a brief sentence. Hello there. That's pretty brief, right? And then I'm going to type a longer one. Boy, if I could spell, this would be a good day, right? I can't spell at all. Okay, here we go. All right, so here I have several different pieces of type. When we're moving things around and aligning with type, we actually have an additional option sort of in the type setting. So first off, let's look at what we already know. If we wanted to center these so that they were perfectly centered one to another, I can click and drag to select all three layers and then choose my vertical center option. And that will line those all up. Now, if I switch over to my text tool and look at my alignment options there, I already have these to center align, but I can change that by clicking whichever align works for that. So keep in mind when you're moving text around, if it's single body text, so I'm not talking about when you're typing multiple lines in a single piece of, when you click drag, and let's just fill it with I know there's a fill in here somewhere. Type paste lorem ipsum. There we go. I'm not talking about lining up like you would for just a single piece of type. This is when it's separate individual pieces that we can get all lined up the same way. So let's just add this to our group and say, you know what, I want all of these to have the same right alignment. So if I go to my Move tool first and say Right Align, there they are. Now if I change that and I was like, you know what, I don't really like it this way, and I don't like that left rag on this chunk of text. With them all still selected, you can change it to left align, and then in your text tool, change that as well to left align there. Now see what it did? It actually popped things around all sorts of ways. So I probably should have done that in reverse order. Changed the alignment of the text, and then changed it in the Move tool. So sorry about that. You'll run into a few things like that, but you can figure it out. You're smart people. So there we go. There's a couple different things you can use for aligning. Keep in mind, these are for single layers. If you have an object in a group folder, then it is affected by this setting up here in the settings option. So let me show you what that is. To put a couple of layers into a group, click drag to get a couple layers and hit Command G. That will group them and put them in a folder. So now when I command click, it won't go to just that one layer. It actually has the group selected. Sometimes this is nice if I'm trying to, for my work, for example, I do a lot of things where I set up table of contents for books. So in that I might do, and I'm just going to use what I'm used to at work, I would use a main header, and I would use a subline, so subline goes here, and I would use a page number. And then I would want to have multiple copies of the same group of text lined up the same way all the way across my page. But if I have these three and I duplicate them out multiple times and then say, okay, well, I want the distance to be the same between each of these. So I pick all of my layers and hit that distribute equally thing. It goes everywhere. That's not what we want to have happen. This is where the group setting can come in really, really handy. So I'm going to back up to where I just have these three things. I'm going to put them in a group. So Command G. They're in a group now. To make a copy of this group, let's just do this. Grab that group and drag it down to the new icon, and it will make a copy, and you can click and drag that out and do it again. Okay, so we have three groups. This is where the group setting comes in handy. If it's set to group, when you hit Command and click on it, it will actually pick that whole group. If it's set to layers, it will do what we just saw and see everything go hairy scary, okay? So let's set it to group. Follow along with me now. Set it to group, Command, click and drag to select everything, and it'll get the groups, and then click that equally distribute, and it will take the whole group and distribute it. And I use that a lot for text groups. You can use it a lot for anything that is multiple layers that kind of make up one object, and you want to make multiple copies of that object group and have them equally spaced apart. This can get a little frustrating if you forget about it and it's set to group and you're trying to select a specific layer in your text. And yes, I did just notice I'd misspelled student life. You know what? That's okay. Spelling doesn't matter for this this tutorial. So if I wanted to select just the 25 and move it of this first one, I can't do it. When I command click on it, it just gives me the whole group. So when I'm working with something like this, I tend to switch back and forth quite a bit between whether I'm choosing a layer to affect or if I'm choosing a group to affect. So that's pretty much it for the extra move functions that you needed to know about. You can move things in groups, you can move things in individual layers, and you can align everything very quickly with just a couple of button clicks.